Right now, Kia has a massive UK advertising campaign on for its electric vehicles, and this is the second battery electric vehicle we've seen from Kia in as many months. Both of the vehicles we've looked at, including this one, are SUVs, and both from that subsector of the SUVs called urban crossover. This particular e-Niro also has the same drivetrain as the Soul EV we reviewed before. However, where the Soul EV's appearance divided opinion, this e-Niro's looks are a lot more mainstream. But is it as good as an electric vehicle? Let's find out. Where the Soul EV can turn heads and in many cases away, the e-Niro is much more innocuous. In fact, it's the other end of the scale, a bit bland in appearance. However, you may want a car that focuses more on practicality than quirky looks. There are 3 versions of the e-Niro available. The 2 is the entry-level version with a 39 kWh battery and 134 bhp, whereas the 3 and 4 have the same 64 kWh battery and 201 bhp motor as the Soul EV. Other than the engines and batteries, you get progressively more luxurious features as you go up the numbers. So the e-Niro range isn't as simple as a Soul EV, but you don't get a big list of options to choose from. You select the trim level that includes the features you want. But even the 2 has a decent set of features such as rear parking sensors, reversing camera and cruise control. All versions come with 17-inch alloys, although the ones with the 2 are not supposed to be as premium as these reasonably attractive two-tone ones. This silver colour is standard, but black, blue, white or grey are £585 extra. The rear privacy glass is standard across all 3 versions. Like the Soul EV, you have a keyless entry system, but you have to press this little button to actually unlock the door before you can get in. Another area where this beats the Soul EV hands down is in boot space. Even without the seats down, you get 451 litres, which is pretty capacious and definitely enough for 4 hand luggage or even a couple of sizable suitcases. It's not entirely obvious how you get the luggage cover out, but once you know, it's not that hard. You get the standard 40, 60 configuration for the boot, and now it's really large. This is 1,405 litres, which is almost as much as a C-Class Mercedes, 3 Series BMW or an Audi A4 Estate, so you've got lots of space for that trip to IKEA. And it's managed to give you that space without the headrest touching the seat in front, which kind of shows just how much room there is here in the back. The e-Niro is tremendously spacious in the front, with plenty of room for people who are much larger than me. I mean, look at this headroom. The black leather is standard on the 3 and 4, whereas the 2 only has cloth seats. Adjustment on the passenger seat is manual. But on a higher end model, the driver's seat has electric adjustment using these buttons on the side, which are extremely intuitive. There's a memory function on the 4 as well, but both 3 and 4 have heated front seats as well as a heated steering wheel. Only the 4 has ventilated front seats, however. The rear passenger seats are incredibly spacious as well. Loads of knee room, lots of headroom, and although you probably wouldn't want to sit in this middle seat for very long, it's at least there and reasonably comfortable. But you do get this rather nice armrest and a couple of cup holders. However, we can't really understand where you've got cup holders here, cup holders in the door, and individual vents for both the rear passengers, but no USB ports. We're told that the highest model in the range also has these 2 rear seats heated as well, although we can't really find the switch for it. And we always like somewhere to put our copy of the Beano when we're not reading it in the rear. You get a reasonably sized glove compartment with more space than just for a pair of gloves, which is more than we can say about some EVs we've reviewed recently. So let's have a look under the bonnet. As you'll see, the electric motor is here because this is still a car that is part of a range that has hybrid drivetrains in it as well. However, the batteries are all underneath the floor. One of the things that we really liked about the Soul EV was the range. Now, if you go for the lower end 2 version of this, you only get 180 miles. However, all the higher end models have the same 282 miles as the Soul EV, which is excellent. That's more than a standard range plus Model 3. We did a 60-mile run across London, lasting 4 hours, and the range that this thing consumed was 60 miles. Using our standard 14p per kilowatt hour and the WLTP range of the 3 or 4, this car costs about 3.2p per mile. Now let's look at the charging options. You get a standard CCS port. Only the 4 has 11 kilowatt AC charging. The rest have 7.2 kilowatt. It takes over 6 hours to charge to 100% on 7.2 kilowatt and 54 minutes for 80% on 100 kilowatt DC. You get the usual complicated array of buttons on the steering wheel, although they are kind of logically arranged with the more kind of cruise control-y stuff on the right and more general stuff like volume on the left. You also get separate stalks for the lights and the windscreen wipers, and these 2 paddles are for moving up and down in the level of regenerative braking. The drive control system is the same as the Soul EV, so you have this wheel for choosing between drive, neutral and reverse or park, and you also have this over here. It's for the drive modes because you get eco, normal and sport mode. There's an electronic parking brake that you can pull up like that, and of course you have the heated seats controls and the heated steering wheel. We quite like the way this central console has been designed. You get a bit of space here with a power plug in the back with a USB charger. One downside is this is a little bit stiff. Once you get inside, we like the way that you've got extra space, or you've got these 2 cup holders as well. So you get a full set of discrete controls to the aircon. It's not zoned, so everybody has to endure the same temperature, but you can switch the fans to only the driver's side. You get down here the usual array of a USB port, then you have the typical 12 volt thing and a charging only USB port, and of course a Qi charger. All versions of the e-Niro have this driver's dashboard display with useful information. You've got the range, and you've got in the centre, when you're driving, you actually get the sat-nav information as well. So this might be familiar if you've looked at our reviews of the Soul EV or the Hyundai Ioniq. You get an 8-inch version with the basic version of the Niro, and you get this 10.25-inch version with the higher end versions. The standard display gives you battery information, music information and a small snippet of the sat-nav. You can have a look at the whole map if you want to, and if you go into the actual navigational settings themselves, you have all of these options. You can enter address by postcode. You can also have a look at the charging stations nearby, which has a live function as well if you have the live connectivity. Then you can use the radio, so it has a DAB radio as well as an FM radio, and you can also play media from another device such as your phone. It supports Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Then of course you can go into the setup menu, which is pretty extensive in this car. You can configure how, for example, how the different drive modes operate and how climate control operates. You can change settings for the way the navigational works. There's the phone connection, Bluetooth obviously, I already talked about that. And so this is a feature that's only available on the 3 or 4. You get access to the UVO or UVO connectivity, which with an app means you can control things remotely for the car. And then you've got advanced settings for various things about how the menu itself operates, some general settings about how the time and etc, etc. Sound mode, media, and how the display itself is shown, and finally whether you want to be a beginner or an expert in voice recognition or have no guidance because you're very, very confident that it knows exactly what you're saying. So a basic car does 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds, but the 2 higher end models with the bigger battery and bigger motor, they take a more respectable 7.5 seconds. That kind of performance obviously needs sport mode to be engaged. Although Models 3 and 4 allegedly have the same performance as the Soul EV, on paper they don't really feel quite as fast. I think it's because this car is a little bit heavier than the Soul EV. There's also a little bit of torque steer when you accelerate, although it's not as pronounced as the Soul. Although this is a bigger car than the Corsa or Honda E, it's still not a bad car for navigating traffic in the city. The steering is quite light and you can turn it one-handed in a leisurely fashion. These paddles on the steering wheel increase or decrease regenerative braking with a easily missed icon on the display telling you how strong your regenerative braking is. Although you don't notice it when you're stuck in traffic like this, the e-Niro E is very comfortable at motorway speeds because the batteries are all below the floor, so the centre of gravity is very low. It's a heavy car, but it feels very planted at motorway speeds. This also makes the handling quite predictable, although the e-Niro is a bit big for any kind of hot hatchness. Moving on to safety, as we've already said, all versions of the e-Niro have cruise control. They also have electronic stability control, emergency stop control and forward collision avoidance. And to keep you on the straight and narrow, they have lane follow and lane keep assist. You get a subtle tug on your steering wheel to tell you when you're starting to stray out of your lane. Only the 4 has blind spot detection and rear cross traffic alert. It's also the only one with a heat pump, because you never know when you might need to pump some heat. The one thing we miss from the Soul, however, is the HUD, which isn't an option with the e-Niro. Yeah. So with the standard government grant, the e-Niro starts with a 2 at 29,595. Moving up to the 3 adds a bit more than 4,000 to the price tag. The top end 4 that we're driving here is a smidgen over £36,000, which is quite a lot of money to pay for a Kia. As with other Kias, the warranty is generous. It's 7 years for 100,000 miles and actually unlimited for 3 years. The battery's also got a 7-year warranty, but that's to 65% of capacity, not the usual 70%. There's a 12-year anti-perforation warranty and 5 years for the paint. The 4 is a relatively high insurance group of 29, the 3 is 26, but the 2 is just 20. So when I looked at the Hyundai Ioniq, I found, which is a word I have real trouble pronouncing, I found that it was quite a languid drive, and this is definitely better. It's not a driver's car essentially, but you know, you can commute to work and enjoy yourself reasonably well in the e-Niro. Two of the biggest factors stopping people from wanting to make the shift to EVs are price and range anxiety, and Kia's done a reasonable job with the price, but a very good job with the range aspect. Unsurprisingly, this car is a lot like the Soul EV to drive, though the Soul EV has a little bit more rascalness about the handling and the acceleration. Of course, with the marginally improved performance come the much more boxy and controversial looks. So overall, we have to say this is a perfect family car. Loads of room for the family to sit in and plenty of room for shopping or your baggage when you go on a family holiday. We only have a few minor gripes, and that's the lack of a HUD compared to the Soul EV and the lack of USB charging points in the rear, so the kids might not be so happy on that long journey. When it comes to parking, all versions have rear parking sensors and a reversing camera, but only the 4 has the front sensors. The camera itself is reasonably clear and you get a kind of quasi 360 view, although it's not one of these camera related ones that you get in higher end vehicles. The Kia e-Niro is not a car that will inflame your passions, but where it wins is in practicality. The range is excellent, it's actually better than a standard Model 3. It's got exceptionally good space inside for the driver and all the passengers, and the boot space is amazing too. It's also reasonably quick. If you're looking for an EV that can do everything that a car should, the Kia e-Niro is highly recommended.